everybody. I'm Tami Kiekhaefer. I'm a licensed clinical social worker.
And my name is Desiree Grimaldi. Welcome to the Unguarded Minds Podcast, where we talk about all the drama, trauma, and crazy things that life throws at you. Today, we have a special guest, Mikkel. She is an empowerment coach who has been at it for 5 years. She started in engineering because she thought that's what she was supposed to do. And her journey through sales and project management and wilderness therapy led her to where she is today, loving what she does and helping individuals who are meant to be. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to dive in.
Yeah. So you have an engineer degree. That's where you started.
I do. Yes.
What made you think that's what you had to do?
Yes. At the time, I was in high school. It's like, okay, my math teacher at the time was like, what do you want to do? He noticed how well I was doing math. We had a good connection. And I was like, I have no idea. And then I came back and I was like, engineering. I'm going to do engineering because I like chemistry. I like math. It seems like a good combination. Then I got to college and I was like, I want to save the world. I want to be out there helping people and making sure the planet is okay. So it's environmental engineering should be the thing to do, putting all the pieces together. But I didn't know a lot of it is working for the government with regulations or working with companies and working around those regulations. So I got in it for about 9 months. I was like, this is not it for me.
Awesome.
What were some of those regulations or the red tape type thing where you wanted to proceed forward and they gave you the kibosh? What did that look like?
So a lot of it, I worked at a paper mill for about 9 months, and there, a lot of it was working on air pollution. So they had, you make paper, there's air that comes out from the processing of that, and it's pretty nasty. And so you got to control it in one way or another. And so all of that was seeing we have these calculations, we have these different things, we take a look at the smokestacks, see everything, and see what we need to do to hit those targets for it all. I wanted to go in and be renewable energies and using all this wastewater and to all these benefits. But because it was a big corporation, they were like, we can't do that. We don't have time, energy. No, let's just continue on with what we're doing. So it was a lot of that red tape where it's I want to build, create, protect all these different things. And it was so hard to push that through within the company.
So you tried to voice up and just your voice went kind of out the back door. Gotcha.
Yeah. Even the small things. I was like, okay, we have these paper towels, very expensive paper towels that are thick and we don't really need them. Let's get a hand one where you crank it and we can get, just like you get at the bathrooms where you can get one of those. And they're like, oh no, that's too much. We can't do that. And I'm like, why not? This is such a small thing. And so that was just a symptom of everything else that was occurring within the company.
Yeah. Got it.
So you didn't just jump into what you do now from there. What was the journey like for you finding your true calling and your passion?
Yes, it was a journey for sure. So growing up, we didn't have a ton of money. So I thought money was going to save it all. So engineering was yeah, you make a lot of money. It's great. And then from there, it's I don't like sitting behind a desk. I don't like the company, the atmosphere for it all. So then I went into sales. And I still had this engineering background, so I went into automation and going into different factories and helping them to automate some of their systems. And it's kind of how it was made every day. So it's cool to see how different factories and different things were made. But it was still okay, I'm not really helping people. I'm not having a direct impact. And I really wanted that. So I transitioned to one thing to another, trying to figure out what it is that I wanted. And to come to the realization that I wanted to help people more directly, I had to take an early retirement, I like to say, and backpack in California for 9 months, where I was I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to figure it out. Let's just figure out what's going on. So in that time, I realized I wanted to be outside and I wanted to be helping people. And there is when I transitioned into the wilderness therapy. So I backpack with kids working on their therapy outdoors. And for everyone that has kids and specifically teenagers, how much their own stuff brings up your own internal stuff. And that's what came from me. Oh yeah, I have anxiety. I have a little bit of depression. I have all these different things that I was suppressing because I didn't know that's what it was called. I didn't know about your thoughts, your beliefs, your emotions, and how they all impact your life. And so I had to come back and do so much work with myself during that time to figure out all these things and uncover it all. And then realizing all that and what I was going through, and realizing so many other people in our society go through these same things. And now I had the tools, the resources to be able to help people manage life and really understand what they're passionate about and go after it in ways that really feel good to them. And so that's what I've transitioned to for the last 5 years, and helping people really understand what it is they want and do it in the ways that work for them too.
That's awesome. So growing up, when you had conflict or uncomfortableness, whatever that was labeled, like what happened? Was it just swish it under the rug and don't talk about it?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I was working with one of my coaches at one point. She was like, "Yeah, your parents not the most emotionally intelligent." And I think for a lot of us, our parents, the older generations, weren't, because they were heads down, like working, doing all these different things. And so looking back, I was like, "Oh yeah, like emotions weren't talked about, feelings weren't talked about, thoughts weren't talked about." It's like the question that was always asked is, "Are you okay?" The assumption is that you're not okay. And so it was an interesting time looking back on that and being like, oh, this is kind of some where all this came from, and doing a lot of healing and conversations with my younger self to be able to transition to a more healthy relationship with my life, with my work, with my partners, with everyone.
Do you have siblings?
I do, 2 younger sisters.
Do you talk to them about what was going on when we were growing up, or did you feel like this, or now I'm seeing, and then what was their reaction to it?
Yeah, my youngest sister, she kind of went through this journey a little bit sooner than me, but I've put it on high speed highway version since I've started it all. And so since then, we've talked a lot about our childhood and what we've experienced and what we've gone through and how it's impacted our lives today. And all of our childhoods impact us for sure. And it's just seeing and realizing what was occurring at that time and seeing what we want to pull and what we want to leave behind for today. And so it's been interesting to talk to her. And like one of the things that she brought up was like that question of, are you okay? It's like, oh yeah. Like I always ask myself that. And like my mind oftentimes goes to something's wrong, something's wrong, something's wrong. And that was because of that question when I was younger. So it's interesting to look back and see all the different connections of life today and where it all comes from too.
Eye-opening. Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's weird too when you talk to your siblings, because even being raised by the same people in the same house at the same time, all of your experiences can be so different. So when
true.
you're healing and you're talking to your siblings and you're like, what, do you remember that? Like they don't always see it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's always interesting. And then have you guys like came together and talked to your parents about it, or?
My youngest sister has. She's had some hard, rough conversations with my parents, and she's lived with them for more recently. And so she's gone back and forth and lived with them. And so that has created some of those dynamics again over time. I have not as much. I've taken it more internally and worked on my own healing process in the journey. Small conversations with them here or there, but they're different people now. We all are. And so it's healing that part of me. So my parents had me when they were 18. And so they were young. They're like having a kid at that time. Like I can't even imagine what it was like for them, or myself if I was going through that. And so to see that and like think like, oh, that's where you're at in life. That's what you were going through. You're still trying to understand yourself during that time. And to have this little person running around like trying to do all these things, and the three of us all pretty close together, it was hard. And so to see that and then like think of who they are today and the choices they made to be where they're at today, living where they want to live, doing the work they want to do, they're different people than where they were. And so it's accepting each other for where we're at and what we're doing today, rather than putting blame on who we were, because we're no longer those people any longer.
Well, and it's hard to blame too, like, because it sounds like your experience came more from lack of knowledge with them, not knowing how to handle, as opposed to like malicious, intentional trauma or manipulation. So it's a little bit easier to go, all right, I was a first time kid, you were a first time parent, and we were trying to figure this out together, as opposed to something more traumatic where it was malicious or selfish, or they just didn't know any different.
Yeah, and I think there can be a fine line between those two sometimes, and sometimes it's like you don't really totally know it's like malicious or like uneducated. But it can be a fine line of like when I was younger and like questioning things, looking back at my life, I've been like, what were they doing? Like, why were they doing that? What was happening? Like, just trying to be mean to me? Did they not understand what was happening? But as I grew older, I understood where they were coming from, what they were going through during that time, and how hard it must have been too, and taking it from their perspective as well.
I was just talking to a client about that around, trying not to personalize what happened to you as a kid. And then it was like, that even just sounds silly. Like, how are you not going to personalize it when it was your parents who, as a kid, you don't know how to separate that stuff out yet. And so everything is personal. And so, but I think that what you're talking about is the older you get, you're able to kind of step back and understand, like, it wasn't just about what I was going through, but it was like, holy cow, I can't imagine what that would be like to have babies at 18, 19 years old, and so but I think that it takes that emotional maturity and maybe emotional intelligence also just to put your stuff over here and see what they might have been dealing with and going through.
It's so true. Yeah, those first 6 years of life, you don't have a filter. So everything that you see, feel, and experience, like it's just like hardwired into your brain, being like, this is how life is what's going on. And so to be able to take that step back, it does take that emotional intelligence to be like, okay, like what actually was occurring, and not having your emotions, your thoughts and beliefs at that time take over where you can't see the real picture of what's going on.
And you had mentioned that even trickled into like your partners and all that, which Tami has a course about that, like finding out like the different parts of how you were raised or who you were, what roles you played, things like that, and carrying that into your relationships. And I think one of the biggest things that people lack is understand. I tell Tami all the time, I'm like, that person's the problem. They're the problem. Like they don't want to know that they're the problem or realize they're the problem, because not many people want to admit that they're the problem. But it's like until somebody realizes and accepts that you can't wait for your parents to apologize, or you can't wait for them to explain, or you can't wait for them to make you feel better. You have to do the work on yourself. It's just like, what is it? The definition of crazy, like
Insanity.
doing the same thing, expecting a different result.
Totally. Yeah, I work with clients where that's the case, where I've been like, why is my husband doing this? Why is my partner doing this? And I'm like, well, let's have a real deep conversation about this, of what's really going on and how you're taking it and experiencing it with it all. Because we can take ownership of how we feel and what we experience at that time. And as you mentioned, like looking back and seeing how those relationships of my childhood impact my current situation, and like how I handled relationships. It was funny because when I was in middle school, this my crush asked me out and was like, oh, do you want to be my girlfriend? And I'm like, no, I'm too scared. Like it's too much and everything. Just because I was like, this is like that transition to seeing my parents from where they're at. And like, I don't want to be like them. I don't want to grow up like that. So it's funny to see that first experience, even though had such a crush on him and wanted to be with him so much. And that transition to like high school and like being so dependent on guys and being my parents pretty much. And then growing up and like transitioning and finding myself in the process. And only with my current husband have I actually been in a healthy relationship. We've been together for 8 years. And so it's been interesting to see that development over time and see like how I like pushed it away, being like, I can't be that, and then totally being it for years. And then stepping back and being like, okay, yes, I can be my own person. I can do what I want. I can have this healthy relationship and have good communication with it all too. So life is a journey for sure.
I mean,
Well,
good
it's
on
very
you to
rare.
do that work. It is. Yeah.
It's very rare to even, I mean, as much as you say, like being able to turn into yourself, it's super rare for you to even be able to identify those stages to get to the point to know yourself. I know for me, I mean, stupid things like I used to highlight my hair, and then when I got to a certain age, I was like, I'm never putting blonde in my hair again because I look like my mother, and I don't want anything like her. I don't want, you know what I mean? So it's like there's so many things that you try to avoid being like them, or like I just don't even want to look like her. So I avoid certain things. But then my mother also, my whole life, I remember growing up, her being like, I'm never going to be like my mother. And she was very, very similar, like repeated those patterns. And it takes a lot for us as children to break those. Because now you're multiple generations in of all these people being the same way. So
Totally.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So what
Yeah.
kind of people do you work with?
Yes, I love to work with women entrepreneurs and women in tech. And how I love to help them is really, especially entrepreneurs, because there's so many different ways that people tell you, you have to grow your business like this. You have to do lead funnels and emails and social media and do all these different things. But in reality, you get to choose your journey with it all. So that's what I love to help people with, is to be able to figure out what's going to work for them. And I use their human design to be able to dive in to understand who it is they are and how they work. And then with those in tech, I love that world because I have been in that world and seen the impact that I can have on our being in our lives and crush our souls in some ways. And so allowing them to really understand what it is they want and how they want to show up in their work and their lives and relationships.
That's awesome. So what tools, techniques do you, like, if I were to call you and say, hey, here's who I am and here's what I'm looking for, like, what would that process look like?
Yes. So first step is to hop on a discovery call, see if we're a good fit, see if we're a good connection, and see what you're challenged with, if you're ready to dive in, and if I'm the right fit to help you with it all. Mm-hmm. So the 3 tenets that I can kind of work through. First is really understanding who you are. And as I mentioned, I use human design for that. And then the second is stepping into your own worthiness. So a lot of thoughts and belief work, timeline healing, all sorts of different things to be able to meet you where you're at and be able to heal and then really sink into, you are worthy. You get to have what you want. And then the third is understanding what it is you want and figuring out a way for you to get it in ways that are going to work for you.
So which step, I'm guessing that middle step is a lot of work.
Yes. And always comes back to that one. Yes. Like human design feeds into that. Then the like, what is it you want? Like, I'm not good enough for that. I can't have that. Yes. All of it comes back to that.
And do you see a lot of women who have had jobs in the tech world and because of their jobs, that has created more of that lack of worth or from childhood growing up, or what do you see?
Yeah, all of it. A lot of women in tech, that it's getting better, but it is a male dominated world. And so to be able to be seen and heard and respected in those roles can be hard, just because of your gender and who you are. And so to be able to step into your confidence and what benefits you provide and what thoughts you have that are going to change things, being able to sink into, yeah, I'm worthy, I can have this. And if it's not in that role that you can't have that because of the situation, the company, the relationships, whatever it is, stepping into a role that is a good fit for you. But then there's also childhood. And we've talked about that a little bit, of how it has such an impact on our lives. And it's all of it. Our past, present, future reality all create who we are today. And so the more that we can influence it and choose where we want to be and who we want to be, the better we have control of our life.
So you have to have thick skin and confidence to go into a male dominated, because you'll get spit up and chewed and spit out. But because I'm in SEO, that's how me and Tami met. I do digital marketing SEO, and I've had some battles because it's always been a male dominant world. And even still today, like, you see a lot more women in SEO, but a lot of it is paired with women traits. So like, they're an SEO, but they're a travel blogger, or they're a chef, or they're like, they still tie it. Like, they can't just, you don't see many of them going, I do SEO. Get the fuck over it. Like, that's who I am. They have to tie it to something very foo-foo. It's very rare to see leaders in SEO that are women. And part of my, when I talk to people, I'm like, you could take the guy who's sitting in the basement in the dark, like all sketchy, and what, like, you can't, he puts you to sleep 10 minutes and go for it. That's not who I am. I'm going to not sugarcoat it for you. I'm going to tell you exactly what the problem is. There's no BS, and I don't have to worry about my mom coming in the basement and yelling at me. But I do. I mean, just having that confidence and that straightforward attitude, you are chosen more over that male because they don't have a personality. They don't, and obviously I'm not speaking about all, but like they don't have the connection that women can have speaking to clients or working with large groups without ego or all the other things.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I can see, because I was in sales for a long time, the technical sales. So I saw that a lot there too, where there was one specific situation where I was training a guy. He had knew nothing about the equipment, knew nothing about everything. We went to a sales call. The guy was asking the other guy, like, oh, like what, like, how does it work? What goes on? And I kept on being like, this is how it works. This is what's going on. Like, this is what's happening. And so afterwards he was like, does that happen often? And I'm like, yeah, like depending on the company, what's going on all the time. But it's just so funny to see that and to be like, okay, like I know the stuff. I'm here. I can help. I can support. But then they go into other companies, and when they had a real problem, when they wanted to try this new technology, try this different thing, I was the best one to be there because I was so open-minded to be like, okay, yeah, we can totally do that. Like, you want to do that? Sure, whatever. So it's so funny how those different things can come up. And it's just, you got to find your audience of who is going to work with you best and connect and be able to help each other the best.
So do you find that the women who you work with who are up against that type of thing in their job, where it's the male dominant and maybe they're working on their self-worth and how they present themselves, do you find that a lot of women will end up leaving that company and finding something else, or do they end up figuring out how to manage themselves within that environment and they're able to stay?
I would say it's about 75-25, where 75% of the time people leave and 25% of the time they're able to stay and figure out what works best for them. And it often has to do with leadership and their management at the time of how supportive they are and how much they can be themselves and really be able to showcase their strengths and their gifts rather than hide behind all the doubts and fears that they've had for so long.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, I think, as we're advancing forward, there's progress, but there is a lot of work that still needs to be done. So
that's so true.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Did you
I'm glad. Huh? Go ahead.
Do you miss sales?
I do a bit of sales with my coaching now. It's very different. But in a way, yes. In a way, no. Like, to be able to help the people that I help, like, it just eye-opening, especially when I talk human design, because they're able to see that they're not alone. There's nothing wrong with them. They have these gifts and skills that they can lean into more. And so that light bulb moment, those eyes opening, it's incredible. But sometimes I do want just being like, okay, you have a problem? Like, I can come in to fix that with this thing, and then showing them and be like, ta-da! So there are some things where it's like, oh yeah, in a way that's kind of easier, but you don't get this trade-off of that transformation and that change that you can see in a person and have them light up the world in that process too.
Yeah. Can you kind of explain human design for our listeners and what that looks like?
So human design is an astrological based.
Oh, hang on just a sec. Sorry. I just got a thing that said that your computer stopped recording. Did you see that, Desiree? So
Still says 99% uploading.
So you and I, Desiree, are recording, but Mikkel is not. Let's see. Whoops. Mikkel, yeah, it says her computer stopped recording.
Why don't you try and just refresh, Mikkel, and we could just pick up right there.
Said this is a result of hardware limitations. First close all running apps and tabs and rejoin the studio.
Yeah, so she's
Okay.
probably just gonna have to rejoin.
Okay, you're back.
Okay, perfect.
I think it said something about apps, or it stopped connecting or something. So okay.
I don't see her.
So
Good catch.
you left off.
Oh,
Maybe just start with did it happen again?
hold on. No, she's not actually loading yet on my end. Do you see her?
Yeah. It says 99% uploaded and she's recording.
Okay.
Here's
All right.
that stuff.
Now she's there. When you were saying that, it was still loading on my side. I
Ah.
didn't see her.
Okay. So maybe just start with what human design is again.
Yes, I can do that.
Okay.
Human design is a tool that is based on astrology. It's based on actually 5 different modalities, but astrology is the one that we know the most. So it's based off of your birth time, your birth date, and your birth location. And in that, it provides an idea of how it is that you work, as well as your relationship with the people around you, the world around you, too. And another cool thing that it provides is how you specifically make decisions. The way of creating the list of the pluses and minuses and figuring out which way to go isn't actually well made for a lot of us. So within human design, you're able to dive in to understand how it is you best make decisions. And with that, then have an easier go at life. And so I see it as a tool to be able to help people sink into their gifts, their talents, to help them understand that there's nothing wrong with them, that this is just how you're wired. Because oftentimes we think that we're all the same, that we're all the same out of the box, we're all the same person. But in reality, we all have these different talents and gifts and struggles that we face. And human design really allows us to see and understand those in a clear light. So it is such a gift to be able to dive in with individuals and see what their human design is and to open their eyes and understanding of who they are. Because once you understand who you are, you can be who you are.
So I bet that's pretty eye-opening for people, and maybe even validating. Maybe they knew some of these things about how they make decisions, or what their influences are, but couldn't really pinpoint it, and
Totally.
just being so frustrated about trying to move forward but feeling just stuck. And so having that validation, I bet, really helps.
Totally. Yeah. I'll share a story of my own self because it was so poignant with it all. So I realized within human design, there's different types. It's kind of the baseline of everything for within human design. And I'm a manifester, which means I move and transition from one thing to another pretty quickly. And for so long, I made myself wrong from transitioning from one job to another. Like, you should stay. Like, why aren't you here for 5 years, more than 2 years? Like, whatever. It's like, I just can't. Like, I want new. I want something new with it all. And then seeing my human design, I was driving in the car in Salt Lake City and listening to a podcast on human design. And I started crying because I was like, there's nothing wrong with me. Like, I'm okay. Like, there's just that realization that I'm doing life as I'm supposed to do. It's such a relief and such a burden that can be removed from your life when you realize there's nothing wrong with you. It's just how you were meant to live life.
I was just thinking, like, that would be something that someone might quickly go, oh, well, here's some Adderall, or here's some Ritalin, or clearly you have ADHD, so you need to be medicated, or, and it's like, no, I don't. That's who I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I've gone through my own phases of that, being like, oh, yeah, I do have ADHD. And like, oh, okay, yeah, like could be described as that. Or I could describe it in a way that empowers me a bit more to be like, okay, like how can I then use that to my benefit and be able to champion these new ideas, these new impacts, these new ideas that I want to create for the world and shape our society, the people around me in ways that are going to improve everyone. So it is such a relief to be able to be like, okay, this is who I'm actually supposed to be, and it's okay. There's nothing wrong with me.
Does your family support what you do?
They do. They know that I'm kind of a little out there and like pushing, like just trying new things and doing different things. So when I told them that I was working at wilderness therapy, for example, they're like, good for you. Yeah. Yeah, good work. Like, I don't know how you do it, but good for you. And I think that's like continued over time to be like, okay, she's just doing her own thing. She's just doing what she does. So
Okay.
yes, in that way, and that they support me in what I'm doing. But it is always something, my husband knows this of me now too. So it's fun to be like, okay, what are you going to try now? I'm just going to try this now. It's going to be fun.
That's so important to have support from your spouse.
Yeah, it's true. Yes.
And then growing up, I just had another question. Growing up with super young parents and kind of learning the whole life thing together, did it influence you one way or another if you wanted to have your own kids, or if you wanted to, live a while, or if maybe that's out of the picture, or is that okay to ask?
Totally. Yes. Thank you for asking. For different phases of my life and different areas that I was living, that question was asked a lot. And now my answer is, I have pet plants. And everyone's just like, what? What's going on here? And I totally kind of get it from there. So no, I do not have kids. A part of that is because of how I was raised and seeing that. So for example, my husband, he has a great relationship with his mother to this day. And I don't have that exactly. So to think about like having kids and having this little child that can be like this connection with them, I haven't experienced that. So I don't know what that would be like, and I'm not drawn to it because of that. As well as even within like see my human design, I know that as well for myself too. So my path is more an individual one where I'm going out there doing all these different things, making waves. And so to be tied down, like my mind is like being tied down, even though it's like not. It's like this experience with someone else that you're creating in this world. And this tying down my mentality of that, what's an example of this is I went to a pet store, was looking at all the pets, and it's like, which one is gonna die the soonest so that I don't have this like thing attached to me for so long. So that's kind of my experience with different things, just because I know I transition from one thing to the next so fast that to be able to have something tied to me for that long is just like, it's not, I don't know what's going to happen in a year. I don't know what's going to happen in 6 months. So to have that experience with it all is a little bit hard for me, but it could be a choice that I make in the future. It's not something that I choose to do now.
Plants sound like the right choice.
You made the decision with your husband, though.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, every year I'm like, oh, it's been another year. This is good, but it's like, it's a lot of time. It's a lot of, we're different people now, which is great to know and to experience and see and be like, okay, you're such a different person now.
Well, I think it was like a TikTok viral where these women were tricking their husbands, and they were like, we didn't renew our marriage license. It expired. Like, so we're not, and the men were like, what the fuck do you mean? What do you mean? And they're like, it expired. You have to renew it. And they made up like the milestone number of their last whatever. And they were like, so we're not married anymore. Like, it just expires. You get a redo at this time. And you'd see the men like taking their rings off, and the women be like, I will kick your ass. Put that goddamn ring on. There is no expiration. But it was funny.
That's hilarious.
Awesome. Oh my God. Well, go ahead.
I wish in life there were more moments where we could check in with ourselves like that and be like, is this actually something that supports me? Is my job, is where I'm living, is my relationship something that I choose actively today? And within I'm an author, so I have my book that I created, and the first chapter is kind of talking about that. Like, we all have choices within our lives, but we're not oftentimes brought to the choice of actually making them. So I kind of like that idea and that concept of being like, okay, like, you have to actually choose these things for yourself and sign up for them again, because each day we're choosing our lives if we know it or not.
I feel like it's I think that, you have like a midlife crisis, but I don't think that you have just one. And for myself, I know about every 7 years I go through this thing, and I can't help it. It happens. And whether I'm going to stop and pay attention to it or not, it's coming at me. And I think it's exciting for me because I think, like you, I like to what's next and what's next. And I probably drive Desiree crazy. Let's do this. Let's do that. And, but I think it drives people around me a little nutty, but I think 7, 8 years, I think it's kind of a normal thing. And if you stop and pay attention, it does give you pause to take that opportunity, if you're aware of it, and say, how am I doing? And, where am I in my life? And I don't suggest like getting divorced every 7 years or something, but I think that evaluating yourself, evaluating your relationship, evaluating how you're showing up is so
Maybe even just
important.
setting new goals for your relationship
Yeah,
or new. But don't
exactly.
they say that like you have like a chemical change every 7 years within your body? Like
I
that's how
believe it.
people, when they hit a certain, point in life, now they're allergic to like 30 other things because there's like this chemical
Um,
change that happens within
mm,
your body every 7 years.
I experienced
Um,
that too. Yeah. Yeah. And
but
that has to do something.
we do, we've slacked now that I think about it. I think like the last year or two, but every, like not on New Year's Eve, but New Year's Day, we as a family like sit down. Like, what's something we want to try? Where's something we want to go? What are some goals we want to set for ourselves? Like, we had the kids do it. We would all do it every year and kind of use that as like a check in. New things we wanted to do in our business, new things we wanted to, experiment with or go as a family or together. Usually Jesse's is around like shooting and working out, but
Those are good
but
goals too. Yeah.
but like the kids would pick like a new sport they wanted to try or a new goal they wanted to hit with the sport or a new activity or whatever it was, but it was something to kind of just hold us accountable for that year and check back in.
And that
Totally.
self-assessment. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And is that sort of what's your book called?
It is called Soar by Living Your Life.
Oh, very cool.
Nice.
What does it say at the bottom? Soar by living your life, ditch unhealthy
Healthy
expectations.
expectations and get after what you want.
I love it. Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah. So the book covers my 3 tenets that I've mentioned before. So understanding yourself, the worthiness, and then understanding what it is you want and getting after it too. So that is what the book is about.
Very cool. Yeah. So you kind of give people that starting ground, but then yeah, if people are like, I think having your starting place is really tough, but then it's like, all right, well, here I am at the starting line. Like, now what do I do? And I think that's where change happens. And so you need accountability, you need support, you know how to get there. And otherwise you can just slip back into your old behaviors and patterns. So I love that, how to get after what you want.
Yeah,
Make it happen.
totally. Right. Yeah. Whatever it is that you want, everyone out there, like there are ways for it to happen. So
It's true. It's
make it
true.
happen. Mm-hmm.
So if you could give our audience one tip, like what would be if they're like, okay, I need to check in with myself, like what would be the top 3 questions that they would like write down on a paper, close everything out and answer those to get some clarity? What would those
Yeah.
questions be?
Do I like who I am being in this moment at this time? And if not, how do you want to be? So this could be how you're showing up in your work, relationships, different areas of your life. Um, how am I supporting myself? What are things that I'm doing that allow myself to do what it is that I want to show up in the world in the ways that I want to be who I want to? And then the third, what am I growing into? What am I becoming? We have so many choices in what that is. And when you understand what that is, then you can reach for it in a more open capacity. When you don't know, it's really hard to get after it.
Phenomenal. I love that. Very cool. It's a lot to sit and think about. And yeah, and it's not just like a one journal, here it is. It's like that requires deep thought. I love those questions. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because somebody like me, I would be like, do you enjoy waking up in the morning and going to your job? Like I would think very little, like
Uh-huh.
just to reassess. So yeah.
Those are good. Talking, I was like, I have to sit with that for a minute. I was even thinking I'm going to have to replay this and watch that and grab those questions again. Those were really good questions. I love it. Yeah.
Right?
Very
Yeah, I love going deep because our lives are in reality deep. If we choose to see that or not, but it is the case. And the more open we are to seeing it as such and asking those questions of ourselves, the more we can be present and enjoy our lives and to create the life that we really want as well.
And how you show up is all based on your thoughts and your patterns of behavior. And so, yeah, so important.
true.
Cool. So how do people find you?
Yes. So they can,
yeah.
You can find me on Facebook. My name, Mikkel Leslie. You can follow me there, as well as my website, afulfilledlifecoaching.com/explore will get you all the ways to stay in touch and connect with me.
Awesome. And is your book on Amazon?
It is on Amazon. Thank you for asking. Yes, you can find it there. It's called Soar by Living Your Life. And actually, for the audience, I would like to provide the first chapter free for everyone so they can take a look and be inspired to take the next steps to choose their own life.
Oh, that's awesome. Fantastic. And they would just reach out to you to grab that.
Yes, and I'll give it to you to possibly put in the show notes too.
Okay.
Yep, we'll definitely link everything below.
Yeah. That's so kind. Thank you.
Awesome.
Well, it was so nice to meet you, and thank you so much, and keep doing good work out there, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me and all the work that you two do too.
Thanks. All right.